everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits and welcome to night 5 of the summer mini skein mini series. I have had so much fun playing around with all of these 10 gram and 20 gram mini skeins, creating some really cool fade sets and gradients. It's just so much fun. So tonight we are going to combine the techniques from the first 4 videos to create something awesome and layered and wonderful. First, we are going to combine the techniques from videos 1 and 2 by dropping these twisted mini skeins into a dye pot. We will get a fade, a gradient of the depth of shade that we see, but it'll also be variegated because since these are twisted up, there will be some resist along the way. Then we will open up these mini skeins, add some zip ties, and put them in a catering steam pan for some low immersion, where we will combine the techniques from videos 3 and 4 by layering on speckles in sort of a gradient fashion, low immersion, using our dry powder mixed with citric acid. At least this is my plan. Who knows? You know that I always like to feel how things are going and modify things as needed. Once again, all of the minis that we are using today are from wool to dye for. They are 75% Superwash Merino, 25% Nylon, and I will be dyeing a combination of 10 gram mini skeins in fingering weight and 20 gram mini skeins in both fingering weight and DK. Since our first step is to dye these twisted skeins, I am not going to pre-soak them. We will be adding them dry into our dye bath. So let's go set it up. In the dye pot, there are 24 cups of water, and I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tablespoons of white vinegar. So this is equivalent to 2 tablespoons of vinegar in 8 cups of water. And then we're going to add a 1/4 cup of Dharma True Black. This could be a lot of color or a little color, depending on how much yarn we add into our pot. But I am very excited, and I imagine, I'm not sure quite how much we'll do in each round, but we'll see. I do have my pasta insert in here, mainly so that way I can remove the twisted skeins really, really easily in the end. I haven't actually tried doing this before, but we'll give it a shot. I feel like we're at a very low boil, and I'm going to start with the 20 gram sock skeins to see and make sure that this is the kind of color gradient that I want to go with. And I'm going to add a mini every 30 seconds using this slotted spoon to help press things down. And so I'm expecting that we might get some color penetration towards the center of some of these skeins. Certainly not towards the end when there's a lot less color, but we do have a large dye bath here. So there is plenty of space for this. But I sort of want to get a sense of with these conditions, how quickly will things strike? How slowly will they strike? We'll get some cool kettle dyed effects because the skeins are dry, and overall I think it's going to be really, really fun. I am now going to go ahead and speed things up as I add the remaining 8 or well 7 skeins to the pot, but then once they're all in, we'll come back and chat.
1, 2, 3, 4.
All of the mini skeins are now in, and there's still some color left in the pot. I think the lightest skein is even not that pale, but there really isn't that much penetration of color if we're getting this much depth of shade. I started with a 1% stock solution of True Black, and I added about 60 milliliters, which means that there are about 0.6 grams of dye for 200 grams. And so if I put them in all at once and dyed the entire skeins, that would give us a depth of shade of 0.3%, which would be a nice medium gray color. However, since the skeins are twisted and we have this resist, the color is going to be darker across the board pretty much overall. And yeah, there's a fair amount of color left in here. I definitely see, you know, more like paler gray and darker gray. I think that I could have gone even steeper into this, and so then we could have ended up with some much paler colors towards the end. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and let this stay in here for, I think, 15 minutes, and then we'll come back and decide if we need more vinegar. All right, 15 minutes later, and the water is starting to clear. There's a tiny bit of color left in there, but most of the color is in our yarn. I could see some gradient, and I know that the differences will probably look a little more extreme once it dries, because that's when I was able to see the difference between some of the blacks in previous videos. I think I'm going to leave the vinegar concentration here, and I'm going to lift these out, remove the minis, and set them aside. With the minis out of the pot, it's really clear how much of the color has left. Looking at the minis, I haven't opened any up yet, but you can see our resist points. And so even if they're all super dark, what I'm hoping is that maybe in totality we'll see more black on some of the ones that went in earlier and less on the ones that went in later. It's still pretty hot, but I am really excited, and I'm gonna spread these out and let them cool for a little while before we touch them. All right, our mini skeins have cooled a bit, and so let's open some of these up. Oh. Ooh. So what's fun is like the interior's all gray and the outside is blackish. That looked like a darker one. Let's pick one that maybe is a little bit lighter. Ooh, these are kind of fun. I wonder how balanced they are, but all right, I'm gonna go ahead and open up the rest, and then maybe we'll lay them out on the counter. It's a little hard to place these in complete order. A lot look very, very similar. There are some where you can see that we've basically got black and some gray all over, and then some others that are clearly the lightest in the bunch with a lot more gray versus a darker charcoal gray. I will attempt to have these in an approximate gradient like this when I put them in the steam pan for our next step. But, you know, the approximate is sort of the best that I can do. I am still a fan of how this turned out. I decided to give this another shot, but this time starting with the 20-gram DK weight mini skeins. I am using the same exhausted dye path, but instead of adding a 1/4 cup of dye, I'm going to cut that in half and add 2 tablespoons, which is equivalent to about an 1/8 cup of dye, or about 30 milliliters. I'm hoping that this time I can end up with some paler gray at the end, but I still might be adding things a little too quickly. So we'll see. And ultimately, I still have 30 10-gram mini skeins I'm going to play with in this video, so we can always try going really far on that one. I feel like this time was a bit more successful, giving us a gradient of our grays. And now I'm going to go open this up. This time you can definitely see our gradient, but even the gray feels fairly medium. It could feel even more pastel. Using the same dye pot for a 3rd time, I added 12 more cups of water plus 3 tablespoons of white vinegar. In the previous 2 rounds, I had 200 grams of yarn total. This time, with 30 10-gram mini skeins, I have 300 grams. And I'm going to keep adding them every 30 seconds until it seems like the last one I add isn't picking up any color. We'll see how far we get. This time I decided to add 3 tablespoons of our 1% black, True Black stock solution. So that's a total of 45 milliliters for our 300 grams of yarn. Phew! It is hot standing by that stove. I just added in the last skein and we've got a beautiful gradient of light to really saturated. I added all 30 in. There is still a bit of color in the pot, so I'm gonna go ahead and leave all this in for 15 minutes on low heat. And then I will remove them, let them cool, and show you the gradient. I think that this is one of the best gradients that we've had today. We go all the way to a very, very pale gray to something that definitely has some black on it. One other reason why this may have worked a bit better on the 10 gram mini skeins is that the color can penetrate a little further, which means we're covering a bit more than just that very outside edge. There's not like huge stretches that don't have any color at all on these yarns. I took every other skein so we could have a smaller gradient that could fit into our pan nicely. I grouped our minis into 5 and then secured them with the removable zip ties. There's no additional water in our pan yet, but I will be adding some. But first I need to go and create our powder so we can be ready to speckle. I put 1 tablespoon of citric acid powder into each of 3 cups. And now I'm going to mix in some acid dyes. We've got some purple pop, and this I know will speckle kind of purpley, but then the pink will spread out. We've got some emerald green, and I'm not measuring the amount of powder I'm putting in, I'm just sort of going about it by feel. And then finally some electric violet, which I hope will be sufficiently different from the purple pop. If it's not, then I will regroup. As you might be able to tell, since I am now dealing with powders, I have put on my respirator and face mask for my safety and personal protection. I am adding 6 cups of water plus 5 tablespoons of white vinegar to our dye bath. There is a fair amount of water in here, so we're not quite low immersion, and we might see some spread from the colors that we add. But I'm okay with that. And once I'm adding the colors, I'm going to try not to move things, so that way we can let the colors strike quickly. Obviously, we will be introducing more acid as we're adding the speckles. And there was acid already in the yarn before we put it in the pan. Things started heating up really quickly. I'm going to do a quick little test. Okay, there's some purple pop. And here is some, what was the violet? Something violet. I quickly swatched the purple pop and the electric violet, just to make sure they were different hues. There's some elements of purple in the, like the violet in the purple pop, but they are different. My plan is to use the purple pop on the darkest, the green in the middle, and then the purple on the lowest. Hopefully I can tell the difference between, okay, I think this is our purple pop. Hopefully I can tell the difference between them as it's time to like go on the yarn. Whoa, a little goes a long way. And I think my water level maybe was a little too high. It was feeling low before, which is why I went a little higher. I want to make sure to get the edge. Because of the steam, this time I will be rinsing and drying my hands in between doing my speckles. But adding the speckles to the citric acid, even if things start spreading out a little bit, it makes them really sharp. It makes it easier to spread out. I could have used even less powder to get them even more spread out, but I'm sort of into a little bit of all over speckles. I'm sort of bringing some of this purple everywhere. I want to be really liberal with that purple pop. Okay, this doesn't make it as wet. So now I'm going to go for the green. And I'm hoping this will give us sort of like a garden, summery vibe in here. You could definitely, people ask me sometimes why I don't like to use a sifter. I like the feel of these colors on my fingers. I like sort of knowing that if I rub harder, like to release more and less color. But ultimately, I think a lot of this comes down to personal preference. I'm adding a little bit down there. Ooh, I like this. I like this. These pops of color are really subtle. I totally could go much heavier, but I don't know if I want to. I'm going to go ahead and leave this, putting the heat on low for 10 minutes, and then we will flip the yarn over and add more color to the other side. I came back because I decided I wanted to add more of the green sort of all over. I just wanted a bit more layering of these tones. So I'm coming in with more of our emerald green, through with our purple, and some just hints of it with this purple pop. A little more in the intermediate area. Yeah, I like that. I like having another color sort of bringing us all together. Just wanted to show a little close-up of what this looks like. I think that this is a really fun, sort of garden-y kind of fade. Ooh, I really, really like it. When I do this on some of the colorways that have less of a transition from dark to light gray, I'm curious how heavy or light I'm going to want to go in with these three colors. But I'm really excited to play. Okay, let's flip. There we go. It is a little warm. Ooh, that emerald, I think it breaks, or at least it has some like blue and green in it, because there's definitely some more teal over there. Oh, unless like some of the, maybe the purple and the green combine. But why would that make I don't know. All right, let's sort of get this situated. Okay. Now, the one thing about speckling is that colors won't go super, super far. So, like, they might not penetrate all the way through the skein. And that's, so we'll do the best that we can, though. I'm pretty sure this is the purple. It's so hard to tell. I mean, I'm sure now it's the purple, but it's just hard to tell with it, just a tiny bit up there. It's really hard to tell with it the way it was, with just the powder. And so it's kind of cool, because the crystals of citric acid then get sort of coated, like the powder sticks to it. So where we hit the water first, things spread out a little more, a little, and then a little less where it doesn't, but let's do more in here. But it makes it, having the citric acid powder, makes it a lot easier to get the speckles really spread out. If I didn't have it, then, and a lot of times when I was going like this, you would see more streaks that could still feel very much like speckles, but it would definitely be more streak-like. So I'm doing the heaviest of the green in the middle, but I am, once again, bringing it all the way down. I'm hoping that it'll look a little bit like a trellis with flowers or something. And so the big difference between this time and when I did this technique before is that this time the speckles are going to be sharper. I mean, clearly you can see there's some places where they might spread a bit, but overall they are sharper. Oh dear, that was a lot. I'm a little wary of the purple pop, but one of the reasons why I wanted to put it on this darkest section is that I was hoping that it would give us some really bright pops of color that maybe could hold up to some of that gray. But I'm not even really seeing it very much yet. I feel like the water level is going a bit lower as we go on. I don't want to like add too much of this. But there's definitely some areas where I'm like, oh, I've definitely added it on. But, okay. It's harder to see against the more charcoal colors. Okay. I think that that's really, really pretty. Once again, I'm going to let this sit for 10 minutes. Then we're going to come, move it around, check it out, see if we might wish that there was more color in there somewhere. And yeah, I'm pretty into how this is turning out. And now we check. So, I mean, there's not a lot on the inside of the skeins. Oh, but there's some in there. Let's see here. Oh, that's hot. Not a ton of color penetration, so I think I'm going to do one more round. This is the issue with doing speckles like this, is that since they penetrate on such a shallow level, they don't go all the way through, which could be fine. It just depends on how sort of heavy or light you want them to be. Last round. Get some purple. That blue is really weirding me out. Again, it's okay. It's up to you what you want the coverage to be like. The less crowded you have your pan, the better your coverage will be overall. Okay, I am pretty happy with that. So I'm going to let this sit a final 10 minutes. But one last time in a little close-up, these speckles are sharp, sharp, sharp. I've been able to get speckles as sharp without having citric acid in there. It just helps to really have them spread out on the yarn. We've even got some good speckles in our purple pop region too. Woohoo! I am going to go ahead and speckle the rest off camera, but I'm going to be doing the same sort of like purple, green, pink kind of thing. These are the 20 gram sock minis in progress, and I just had a thought. What if, I suppose that there's pink over there, but I wonder what would happen. And of course this is the one with the darkest kind of area, but I wonder what would happen if I restructured it like this. So I had sort of the medium tones with the green, and then the green and purple, and then the pink. That actually might be a little interesting, and I should play around with all this as I'm setting up the finished skeins. I don't know about you, but I am learning a ton through this series. The pan is stained a tad bit pink, so that wasn't bleeding, but we could see some bleeding now, but yay! I wanted to pick colors that would really pop on our gray bases, but then wouldn't also detract from that sort of gradient that we had going on already. I've said this before, but I don't consider color selection to be a strong suit of mine. And I had sort of like this vision in my head. I don't think I quite hit it, but nevertheless, I think that we've got some stunning, stunning yarn. I just probably could have created something that's a bit more dramatic. But for my first time really playing with minis and all these kinds of ways, I am so happy with everything that I've learned. And I can't wait to play around more with mini skeins and full skeins of yarn with some of these techniques. And I am just so, so excited. But I'll have to show you guys like what these speckles look like next to the ones that we did last night. So that way you can see. But yeah, we are going to go put this through the spin dryer, hang it up to dry, and I think I'll probably wash the other skeins off camera and just show you them when they're ready. Even in some areas where the speckles are heavier, I think they are overall sharper than the speckles we did on the counter and then steamed. Now, granted, these techniques are similar yet different. I went a lot heavier in last night's episode, but I think that you can add heat at different points to get different kinds of effects. And some of these speckles are just so sharp. Mixing in the citric acid really makes it easy to spread them out and have them as heavy or discreet as you want. Here is just one of the sets that we created spread out a little bit. Right here we have 15 10-gram skeins, and you can see a really, really fun progression. However, if we were going to use all 15 in one project, we wouldn't be limited to that kind of order. That was in an order where we had a progression of the grays from lightest to darkest. But now we have green with a little bit of purple and pink, more purple, a little less green, and then a tiny amount of green and pink. And this would be another really valid way to combine this yarn together. So this is just another way to say, hey, you don't have to have things in the same order that you dyed them. Now, if we separated these into thirds and did 3 different pans with really different, distinct colorways, it would be a little easier to get a lot of difference between the speckle colors. Since we are in one pan, there was a little bit more of a limitation, but I still think that what we created was really awesome. What's amazing to me is how different these skeins look in terms of the grays, dry than wet. On our DK skeins that we did second, there is much more of a gradient from sort of a charcoal gray down to a very pale gray. On our fingering weight skeins, we've got a black to a medium dark gray here. So I feel like on these skeins, which also had a lot more weight in them, the speckles pop a little bit more and they feel a little more muted on the DK, because I think overall there's a lot more color in terms of gray in each of the skeins. I definitely used less dye on the DK weight yarn as I did with the fingering weight. So I don't know how much the difference in yarn weight is a factor versus the fact that I had less dye in there to begin with. Since these skeins were smaller and I was still adding them every 30 seconds, the gradient on the grays that we got here is possibly the most extreme. On the lightest ones, it's even hard to see that that color is there, which again is surprising because it felt very, very obvious when I was looking at them originally while wet. But so this is just another instance where it's so much easier to tell the difference between hues of colors when things are dry. I think that if I was going to do this again, I might add zip ties on earlier and number the zip ties so that way I could really define the order that the yarn went into the pot. This could help certainly on the fingering weight one, where the difference in the gray between this one and the one on the other end is, you know, not as extreme as we see here. But I don't know, I just think that this was really, really fun however you look at it. I think that I would enjoy creating this gradient of grays and then maybe even dyeing the mini skeins two at a time. Two at a time, because then we could really combine them and really vary up the hues that are in each one a lot more, and give us more, I guess, separation within our little gradients. Once the yarn is dry, you can have fun and play around with the order and rearrange it a lot. I just divided this in half, the 20 gram mini skeins in half, but there are just so many ways that you could layer them together. And even combining the 10 gram mini skeins with the 20 gram mini skeins. I don't want you all to worry because I did not leave any dye behind. I took the rest of the powders that we had and layered them together to create some stunning speckled yarn. This bonus video will come out at some point in the future. So that's a wrap for our summer mini skein mini series, right? Well, pretty much. It's a wrap on the mini skeins portion at least. But there are still 2 videos in this series. And I'm going to be playing around with some fun summer colorways on some sock yarn and sock lengths that were the fun add-ons people could add to their summer sampler boxes. Stay tuned because those videos will be coming out this weekend. I love playing with mini skeins, and doing this series and this whole week really has really inspired me and encouraged me to play with color in many different ways. It can be easier to test out techniques on mini skeins before you go and scale them up and try them on full skeins. Now, would these techniques be really different if I was using 100 gram skeins versus 10 gram? Absolutely. But it's a great way to play around with different color combinations on a small scale. And so I could look at this kind of fade from dark to light gray with the speckles on top and think, okay, I wish that I had done XYZ. Maybe I should have introduced more blue at this point, or a deeper purple, or what have you. And so it's a way to then go and play with different color combinations on a larger scale after you've played with them on minis. Additionally, trying some kind of fade set on mini skeins is more accessible, I think, to more people than a sock blank. Almost anyone could take the back of a chair and 100 gram skein of yarn and wind off some mini skeins. You don't need to have any specialized equipment in order to do that. And then you can go and create a fade without having a blank made, and I think that it is a really fun way to play. If you enjoyed this series, make sure you're subscribed to the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel. Turn on notifications and like the video. Leave a comment and let me know what kind of special series you would like to see in the future. Right now, I'm starting to think ahead to Hanukkah and what kind of special I would like to create this December. Any suggestions? This series exists because of all of your support, but specifically the ChemKnits patrons. On Patreon, it's a platform where fans can support the content creators they really enjoy, and the first milestone that we hit led to the creation of this special series. So bonus content for everyone. And so I just want to thank all of you so much for supporting all things ChemKnits. If you want to learn more about the Patreon, you can find links in the video description and iCard. Did you miss a night of this 2019 Summer Skeins mini-series? There's a whole playlist of videos that will include the bonus add-on full skeins and the dyepot weeklies that came out this week that feature smaller scale dyeing projects using mini skeins. In those videos, we took a look at cereal dilutions to create a fade set, and also a twist on the first night where we attempted to break Wilton's Violet food coloring by slowly adding skeins of yarn to a dye pot one at a time. All of these videos will be in the SMSMS playlist. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I am not done playing with mini skeins, and so stay tuned because I know that there will be more videos coming out in the future.